He says he likes you, and then, suddenly, disappears. One moment, he opens up, shares something real, something personal, and the next, he retreats into silence, as if nothing ever happened. One day, his words are warm and full of affection, and the next, he feels distant, cold, unreachable. And you're left sitting there asking yourself the same question again and again. Is he truly falling in love? Or is he just playing games with my heart? But what if I told you that what looks like confusion might actually be a test? That sometimes when a man is genuinely falling in love, he doesn't come closer. He steps back, not because he doesn't care, but because he's afraid of how much he does. You know that odd feeling when your heart begins to hope, but your gut quietly warns you that something isn't right. When his actions don't match his words, and the inconsistency leaves you emotionally drained, yet somehow even more drawn to him, that push and pull, that emotional storm can make even the strongest woman doubt her own judgment. But if you're someone who has loved deeply, who's known both the beauty and pain of connection, who still believes that real love exists beyond fear and pride, then what I'm about to share might help you see things more clearly. There's a moment, subtle, quiet, invisible to anyone else, when a woman realizes she's being tested. It doesn't come with drama or confrontation. It's not loud or obvious. It happens quietly in silence. Suddenly, he stops calling. His tone shifts. His messages become shorter, vague, as if he's pulling away, but doesn't want to admit it. You begin to wonder if you imagined the closeness you once felt. In that silence, something deep and instinctive awakens inside you. A whisper that says, "Am I safe? Am I wanted? Or am I being emotionally played again?" What many people don't understand is that a man who is falling in love doesn't always move toward you. Sometimes he quietly withdraws, almost invisibly, because love is risky for him too. It shakes the foundations of his identity. It reopens old wounds, awakens memories he thought were buried. It challenges the image he has spent his whole life protecting. He tests, not because he wants to hurt you, but because, on a deeper level, he's trying to see if the ground he's stepping on is stable. He might trigger your nervous system without even realizing it. He wants to see, often unconsciously, whether you can stay grounded even when he pulls back. Can you stay calm when he doesn't show affection? For a woman who has known toxic patterns or trauma bonds, this feels like déjà vu. The inner child inside her, the one who learned that love always comes with uncertainty, wakes up. She doesn't just want reassurance, she needs it to feel safe. And that's where the real test begins. Not for him, but for her. Because in that silence, her mind becomes a battlefield. Did I do something wrong? Is he losing interest? Do I need to fix it? Do I have to prove my worth again? But what if, instead of rejection, his silence is a mirror, showing you where you still abandon yourself for love? What if it's not a test of loyalty, but a test of your emotional strength? A woman with self-worth doesn't chase scraps of affection. She doesn't lose herself in panic when a man grows quiet. She stays rooted, not in his attention, but in her own inner calm. She knows that true feminine power doesn't come from controlling someone else's behavior. It comes from trusting her own presence. She doesn't beg for closeness to calm her fear. She remains still, letting the truth reveal itself naturally. And here's the thing, whether he knows it or not, he's watching not your reaction, but your emotional regulation. He's watching to see if you can sit with uncertainty without betraying yourself. Do you choose dignity over desperation? Can you hold your center when things feel unclear? This is where real connection is tested, because true intimacy isn't built on constant reassurance. It grows through resilience, through the quiet confidence that says, I can stand on my own. When you do that, when you choose stillness instead of panic, something changes. He feels it. He feels the calm energy of a woman who doesn't beg for love, but to whom love naturally flows. That's the kind of energy that draws a man closer. It's magnetic, it's grounding, it's rare, But the testing doesn't stop there. The next challenge comes in a different form, quieter, subtler, but just as revealing. This one isn't about distance, it's about boundaries. There comes a moment when the line between affection and control begins to blur. Maybe you're laughing together over dinner, playful and light-hearted, and then he says something half-joking, half-serious, that stings. A comment about your past, your appearance, or how you seem too much or too intimidating. Or maybe his touch lingers a bit too long, crosses a line you didn't give permission for, and suddenly a question rises inside you. Was that just a joke, or was it another test? This is the second kind of test, the one that goes beyond affection. He's checking something instinctive, something deeply primal. Can you protect yourself, even from him? It's not always conscious, but every masculine soul wants to feel the structure of the woman's boundaries. He needs to know that your values aren't negotiable, because a man cannot build an emotionally safe bond with a woman whose walls collapse at the first sign of pressure. Think of it like building a home. A house without solid walls cannot stand through the storm. A man, whether he admits it or not, respects what he cannot easily control. That's why feminine energy isn't weak or passive. It's receptive, yes, but it's also powerfully alert. It notices shifts, senses tension, and moves with grace instead of fear. True feminine strength doesn't fight for control. It simply decides who gets access and who doesn't. This is where many women who've been hurt before face their hardest moment. Their desire for closeness clashes with their instinct for protection. Do you laugh it off to keep the peace? Stay silent so you don't ruin the mood? Or do you take a breath, stay calm, and set your boundary gently but firmly? Because it's not about the joke. It's about how quickly you give up yourself just to avoid discomfort. It's about how much of your truth you silence in the name of keeping harmony. Women who grew up in emotionally unsafe environments often learned that speaking up leads to rejection. So they stay quiet, hoping love will fill the silence. But silence sends a message that his respect can be negotiated. A woman with self-respect understands that every uncomfortable moment is a chance to teach the world how to treat her. She doesn't react with anger. She doesn't shrink in fear. She simply mirrors strength through calm truth. That doesn't feel right. And when she says that, when she stands in quiet power, the energy shifts. He feels it. The air changes. In that moment, she's no longer just someone to desire. She becomes someone worth respecting, someone worth rising for. Yet, even after that, another silence often follows. He watches. He wonders, was that confidence real, or was it just an act? This is why the next test goes even deeper. He says little, maybe nothing at all. He simply watches how you exist when he isn't feeding the connection with words. There's almost nothing as confusing as the silence that comes after real vulnerability. One day, he tells you how special you are, how easy it is to talk to you, how rare your energy feels, and the next day, he disappears into his own world. Not forever, but long enough for doubt to creep in, long enough for your mind to replay every detail, every pause, every word you might have said wrong. It's not loud rejection, it's quiet uncertainty. And that silence can be deafening. So why does he do it? Why open up only to pull away? The truth is, when a man begins to feel real emotional attachment, when intimacy starts to grow roots, his instinct isn't always to move closer. It's to test whether the connection can survive distance. He wants to know if he can be fully seen and still be safe. He disappears not to punish you, but to see if you can handle the discomfort without losing your center. Because for him, love isn't just closeness. It's risk. The risk of being seen, of being vulnerable, of being needed. And in that risk, something deep happens for both people. His withdrawal activates all the hidden wounds within you, the parts that fear abandonment, that crave reassurance, that still believe love must be earned. But if in that moment you can stay with yourself, not chasing, not explaining, not begging for clarity, you pass the only test that truly matters. Because in the end, love doesn't grow through chasing or proving. It grows through presence, through two people who can face uncertainty, stay open, and meet in truth without losing themselves. It touches something deep inside her, old wounds that she thought were healed. The moments when she was ignored, ghosted, or left without a reason come rushing back like echoes from the past. Her nervous system doesn't just register distance, it sounds the alarm as if danger has returned. And if she isn't fully aware, she reacts automatically. She starts chasing the connection, sending messages, trying to fill the silence, doing everything to fix something that might not even be broken. That's the trap, the emotional loop, the psychological trigger that keeps her tied to uncertainty. But for a woman who has grown into her healed feminine energy, the silence takes on a new meaning. It's no longer something to fear. It becomes a mirror, a sacred pause, a place to breathe. She doesn't rush to fill the void because she understands that not every pause means rejection. She becomes the space, calm, grounded, responsive, still. Not because she's detached or indifferent, but because she finally knows that true emotional safety doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from leading herself. A man in love, whether he knows it or not, wants to see this. He wants to know what happens when he stops feeding the connection. Do you crumble? Do you confront? Do you fall back into old habits of over-adapting? Or do you pause, breathe, regulate your emotions, and keep living your life without trying to prove your worth? Through his quiet observation, he sees not just your reactions, but your relationship with yourself. He notices your self-control, your emotional maturity, your ability to stay whole, even in uncertainty. And through that awareness, something inside him begins to change. He doesn't just feel attraction anymore, he starts to feel safe with you. Because a woman who doesn't fall apart in his absence is a woman he can trust with his presence. Safety, after all, has many layers. And sometimes the next test doesn't come through absence at all. It comes through closeness, through intimacy. He begins to open up slowly, carefully, and he watches how you respond to his shadows. Even the strongest man, when he starts to love, secretly fears being truly seen. It's in the subtle drop in his tone when he talks about his father. It's in the quiet admission that he doesn't feel as confident as people think he is. Or when he confesses that someone before you hurt him deeply, maybe even broke him in ways he never talks about. These are not just confessions. They are thresholds, small emotional bridges he's trying to build between you and his inner world. Each one carries a silent fear. Will you still look at him the same way after hearing this? Or will you turn away, judge him, or pity him? For many men, especially those who grew up believing that vulnerability equals weakness, opening up feels like standing naked in a storm. The armor doesn't fall to impress you, it falls to test you. He's silently asking, can you hold this without hurting me further? And this is where feminine energy becomes something much more meaningful than sweetness or softness. It becomes sacred presence, not reactive, not rescuing, but steady, a depth that listens beyond words. It's the quiet dignity of a woman who has learned not to flinch at pain, neither her own nor his. But here's where things get complicated. If you've spent much of your life being the one who heals, who fixes, who saves others to feel needed, his vulnerability can become a risky invitation. Without realizing it, you slip from being his lover into becoming his therapist. You start carrying emotions that are not yours to hold. You take responsibility for wounds he must face on his own. He senses this immediately. And it's not that he pulls away because he doesn't care or wasn't serious. He pulls away because he feels tangled, trapped in emotional dependency instead of partnership. A woman with high self-worth doesn't drown in a man's pain. She doesn't inflate herself to become his emotional savior. She listens deeply. She offers warmth and safety, but she stays centered. She doesn't make his healing her mission. She allows him to see himself clearly through her acceptance without losing herself in his chaos. And something powerful happens in that space. He begins to realize that love doesn't require losing independence. He learns that intimacy can exist alongside boundaries, that emotional safety isn't about avoiding discomfort or conflict. It's about taking responsibility without judgment. He starts to understand that he can show his darkness and still be met with light, that he can reveal his flaws without being consumed by them or by you. But then another layer of doubt appears. He wonders quietly, was that real compassion, or was it just a performance? Is your empathy something constant or something conditional? Will you still hold that space when he's not at his best? When his behavior triggers you or becomes unpleasant, he doesn't ask these questions out loud. He observes. And then, one day, without warning, another subtle test begins. Maybe you don't even notice it. You're out together and another man enters the room. Maybe it's the barista who smiles too long, the friend who compliments you, or the co-worker whose name you mention one too many times. And in that moment, his focus isn't really on the other man. It's on you. Not because he's insecure, but because something deep and instinctive in him is watching, asking a silent question. Can I trust you when I'm not watching? Are you loyal even when you don't have to be? For a man who's beginning to truly love, especially one who has been betrayed or raised in emotionally unstable conditions, trust isn't automatic. It must be built piece by piece through consistency, not just in words, but in the small, almost invisible details. He doesn't become jealous like a child. Instead, he observes your alignment, your inner direction. He watches where your attention goes when the world offers you validation. It's not about possession. It's about orientation. Does your energy remain centered, returning to him not because you have to, but because you choose to? Do you honor your connection without playing with attention as currency? These moments reveal more than you realize. And yet, if you've been shaped by abandonment or rejection, if your past taught you to seek validation to feel seen, you might unconsciously flirt or draw attention just to reassure yourself that you're still desired. Maybe you bring up an ex, not to compare, but to remind yourself that you once mattered to someone. These are coping habits built from times when love felt uncertain, when being wanted felt temporary. Even if you deeply love this new man, a part of you might still be testing, asking quietly, am I enough? Do I still have control if this ends? And though you don't say it, he feels it. He feels it in your tone, in the extra moment your eyes linger on someone else, in the subtle shift of your energy. He can sense when you're divided, when your heart is here, but your mind still reaches for safety elsewhere. If he's a man with emotional depth, that division unsettles him, because to him, loyalty isn't about ownership, it's about inner stability. And when he meets a woman whose sense of worth is solid, who doesn't seek attention as proof of value, he feels something profound. Peace. A woman grounded in her healed feminine energy doesn't perform loyalty. She lives it naturally. She doesn't shrink her light to make him comfortable. But she also doesn't use it to attract unnecessary validation. She's magnetic because her confidence is quiet and her boundaries are clear. Her energy says, my worth isn't for sale. And when she moves through the world like that, graceful, grounded, radiant, but self-contained, he feels something rare, emotional safety, the kind that makes a man lower his armor. Not because he's weak, but because he finally feels safe enough to be real, safe enough to be seen without performance. But trust is never built in one moment. It unfolds through time, through patterns, through challenges. And that's why his next test isn't about distance, silence, or jealousy. It's something deeper, a test of your beliefs. He begins to challenge the very things that shape your worldview. Not to provoke you, but to see if your strength is real or just a mask. It starts small, playfully. You say you believe in therapy, and he smirks. Isn't that just another modern trend? You talk about your passion project, and he half-jokingly says, maybe you're hiding behind your work to avoid closeness. At first, it feels like teasing, but beneath it, he's searching for something real. Can you hold your truth without needing his approval? Can you stay open without defending yourself? He's not just testing your ideas, he's testing your emotional foundation, the depth beneath your confidence. It's not openly hostile, but there's a tension that slowly fills the air, a quiet challenge that asks something deeper. Beneath it all lingers the silent question, do you truly stand by what you say, or do you bend when your beliefs are tested? When a man begins to truly fall in love, he's not just drawn to your softness or the gentle parts of your nature. He also longs to feel your structure, your groundedness, the inner walls that do not collapse when life leans against them. This is rarely something he does consciously. It's instinctive, almost primal. When his feelings are real, he begins to test the architecture of your spirit. He wonders, do you hold these values just to feel strong, or have you earned them through experience, reflection, and pain? And this is where the paradox begins. Many women, especially those shaped by difficult or toxic relationships, learned early on that being pleasing was the safest way to survive. Disagreement meant danger. Speaking their truth meant risking abandonment or conflict. So they learned to shrink, to smile through discomfort, to smooth over rough edges just to keep peace. They mistook compliance for closeness and silence for safety. So, when a man challenges them, even gently, they freeze. They change the topic, offer a nervous laugh, or soften their voice, hoping to restore harmony. But a healed woman moves differently. She doesn't prove her power through resistance, nor does she yield just to be liked. She meets the moment with presence, not to win an argument, but to remain rooted in her truth. Her feminine energy at this level is more than warmth and kindness. It carries discernment. It radiates calm, self-knowing, an unspoken confidence that says, this is who I am. She is not triggered, nor does she seek validation. This woman doesn't crumble when a man questions her dreams or direction. She listens, not to defend, but to reveal the depth behind her choices, and in doing so, she disarms him because he's not used to being met that way. Most people either defend themselves or retreat when challenged. But she mirrors, she reflects, she thinks before she reacts. She answers not from fear, but from clarity. And in that moment, he begins to realize that this woman doesn't depend on approval to feel loved. She knows who she is, and that is what makes her magnetic. Still, he wonders, not from suspicion, but from curiosity. Is her strength steady or only conditional? Does she remain centered when he's distant, confused, or unkind? When love feels uncertain or messy, does she still stand tall? The next test doesn't come through words, but through patterns, through small moments that awaken old memories, a subtle shift in tone, a sarcastic remark that cuts a little too deep, a sudden silence where there used to be warmth. Nothing dramatic, yet something inside you stirs. That old familiar whisper returns, this feels unsafe, and suddenly your heart recognizes a pattern it thought it had outgrown. That's the hidden paradox of healing. Even when you attract better, more conscious men, part of your nervous system still waits for the storm. It remembers the chaos of the past, and sometimes the man before you, without meaning to, begins to mirror those same emotional patterns. Not because he's wrong for you, but because love always brings the shadows to the surface. When real intimacy begins, the psyche starts pulling up old pain to see if it still controls you. When this happens, he's observing, not testing you like a game, but watching unconsciously how you respond when he accidentally becomes a reflection of your past. Do you lose your voice again? Do you try to fix, to please, to prove you're enough? Or can you stay with yourself this time, breathing through the discomfort without abandoning your truth? This is where true growth begins, not in being perfect, but in being aware. When you notice the pattern, and choose not to replay it. You reclaim your power. That is what separates a woman of deep self-worth from the rest. Not that she avoids hard relationships, but that she interrupts the old inheritance. She no longer sacrifices herself just to feel loved. She names what hurts without turning it into a weapon or demanding someone else heal it for her, and when she does, something softens in him too. He realizes you're not chasing perfection, only presence. He sees that you don't need him to rescue you from your pain because you've already begun to protect yourself. Yet, beneath his curiosity lies one last question. Is her strength only present when love is gentle, or can she walk away when love becomes heavy and painful? So without even knowing it, he presses one last time, not to see if you'll stay, but to see if you know when it's time to leave. Then comes the silence. The air feels different. He's there, but not really. The warmth has faded. The laughter feels rehearsed. And the connection that once felt alive now feels like a memory. You can sense the distance growing, but you keep holding on, not because you're blind, but because you hope. You hope he'll return to the man who once saw you. You tell yourself, maybe he's just lost, confused, tired. Maybe this is where you prove your love is strong enough to fix what's breaking. That is often the most painful test, the one he gives without realizing it. He stops showing up with tenderness. He becomes colder, quieter, detached. And while it may look like rejection, deep down, he's observing something else. Will you betray yourself again just to keep him close? This is where many women break, especially those who've known love as something they had to earn. They accept crumbs and call it patience. They excuse neglect and call it loyalty. But what they're really doing is disappearing. It's not devotion. It's self-abandonment in disguise. In the psychology of love, this is the most defining moment. It's not the grand gestures or the words that prove who you are. It's how you hold yourself when the connection begins to fade. True feminine strength isn't about how much she gives, but how much loss she can face without losing herself. And this is where the woman of true worth rises. Not because she's hardened, but because she's clear. Her energy no longer chases what's fading. She doesn't beg or bargain. She blesses the man silently and walks toward the light of her own becoming. Her power isn't rooted in pride, but in remembrance, the sacred knowing that love is not meant to demand her bleeding heart. It's meant to meet her peace. And even as she walks away, the pain doesn't disappear. It lingers because letting go of hope hurts differently. But it's a clean pain, the kind that transforms instead of destroys. And the man, if he ever truly cared, feels the echo of that departure. He realizes she never played games, never manipulated, never demanded more than honesty. She was ready to love him fully, but not ready to lose herself again. And so he's left with her absence, an absence that speaks louder than her presence ever could. Because what she took with her wasn't anger. It was the mirror that showed him who he really was. That echo stays because it wasn't just about her leaving. It was the quiet proof of her worth. The unspoken reminder that if he ever wants to keep a woman like her, he must stop testing love and start showing up for it. And that's what I want you to remember. When a man tests you, it's not a game. It's an invitation, a call for you to rise, to stay true to your standards, and to embody the woman you've become through all your pain and healing. You're not here to prove your worth. You're here to remember it. Tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced this kind of connection or moment in your life? If this message spoke to you or helped you see things more clearly, give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more insights about healing, self-worth, and the journey of feminine strength. And let me know which topics you'd love me to explore next. I truly want to hear from you.